Okay, I'm going to be doing this video on Luke chapter 6, 37 through, through 42. And we're going to read about Jesus's teaching about judging. And before anybody gets any idea, we're going to look at what the right interpretation of this passage is and what the wrong one is. Because this is one of those passages in scriptures that can easily be misquoted to suit what we want it to mean. But it means what it means, and we're going to go over that today. It says, "Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and it will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For what measure you use, it will be measured to you." It's kind of like that old expression, what goes around comes around. He also told them this parable, "Can a blind man lead a blind man? Will they not both fall into a pit? A student is not above his teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like their teacher. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Brother, let me take the speck out of your eye,' when you yourself fail to see the plank in your own eye? You hypocrites, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." So first of all, we see Jesus talking about not judging others. And what we got to understand is, throughout Scripture, this can be an easily misinterpreted passage, meaning you can't evaluate someone's actions. But Jesus is more so talking about the attitude in which we judge. I mean, there's a difference between coming to someone in an attitude of arrogance saying, "Oh, look at what you did. I can't believe you. Oh my gosh." And then there's another thing. There's another attitude that we could have when we're trying to help someone who is struggling with this particular issue or that, or doing this or that. We can use a spirit of humility and grace and kindness and gentleness when approaching them on that subject. "Oh, I see you're struggling with this. I will definitely be praying for you. What can we do to help you with this?" There's very difference in those two attitudes. See, and Jesus also taught about how we're not in a place to go to someone and address something they're doing if we're doing the same thing ourselves. For example, Jesus said, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when you yourself fail to see the plank in your own eye?" And that's a big thing. When we're being hypocritical and not dealing with certain sin in our own lives, we lose our ground and authority to speak into others' life about their struggles that they're dealing with. We all have struggles. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, but we should always be trying to make progress in the right direction. And so, if we're not willing to address certain things about ourselves that are not right, it's kind of irrational to think we could speak into others about the things that they're dealing with that we think are out of line. In the scripture, we are told in actually 1 Corinthians, "Who am I to judge those outside the church? God will judge those outside the church. You are to judge those inside the church." And what Paul is saying there in that passage is we're to hold other believers accountable for their actions and their behavior. But he's saying, well, I can't really hold the world accountable to our Christian standards because they're not Christians. They don't know Christ. They don't follow Christ. So how can I expect them to listen to what I have to say when it comes to what is true and right and reasonable? But we are called to address other believers when another believer is caught in some kind of transgression or falling. We are to address that with a spirit of gentleness, and I'll go to Galatians 6 to read about how we're supposed to do that. And I think this is a very good passage to describe what the proper type of addressing a particular sin in someone else who's a fellow believer. If we see something that comes to our mind that we think it might be out of line or out of character, we should always address that person in a spirit of gentleness, kindness, compassion, self-control, and not in anger and judgmentality. I mean, a judgmental attitude is very different than a concerned attitude. Let's just say that for sure. Let's take a look here. We'll turn to Galatians. I have to find it in my Bible real quick. Sometimes some of these little books are hard to find in their specific passages because they're all kind of clumped together. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourself, or you may also be tempted. Carry each other's burdens. In this way you fulfill the law of Christ. And so we see that we do have grounds to sometimes go to a fellow believer who's struggling with something, some particular type of sin. But how are we to do it? Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. That means we come with an attitude of humility. We come with an attitude of genuine concern and care for that person. We're like, okay, you go to your friend, maybe you know your friend is dabbling in this or getting himself into that, and you say, hey, brother, I'm worried about you. I don't want to see you get down a track that might harm you or harm someone else in the process. So let's talk about this. Let's try to work through this, see what we can do to get you back on track. That is different than coming to someone and saying, oh, what are you doing, man? I can't believe you did that. Oh my gosh. What is wrong with you? You know, you see there's a very difference in those two approaches. And it's sometimes not a matter of it's sometimes a matter of what we say and how we say it that makes all the difference. Because if people know we're genuinely concerned and we're on their side and trying to help them, they're more likely to listen to what we have to say. But let's say your friend comes to you and you see he's doing this and that and the other, and he's coming to you to approach you about this particular struggle in your life, and you see he's not following his own example that he's trying to give to you, you're not likely to incline to listen to that. And that's what Jesus meant by, will the blind lead the blind? Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye when you fail to pay attention to the log in your own eye? So whenever we're confronting or addressing a particular struggle in someone else, we should always make sure that we are willing to deal with our own. It's kind of like, I'll give an analogy. Let's say you see your neighbor's house, his roof is collapsing in, or his roof is kind of worn out, and maybe it's not collapsing in, but his yard is kind of unkept, and then you go to him and say, well, blah, 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 your yard looks trashy, your house needs these repairs, but what if at that same time your house looked like it was about to collapse in on itself too? Then that would be just no grounds to speak into your neighbor's life at all. But what if you both together said, hey, how about let's make a project for ourselves that we'll both work on each other's houses together, and I'll help you with my yard, I'll help you with your yard, and you can help me with mine, and we'll work together to repair our houses. And that's a very different approach than just going to somebody, pointing out the wrongs and saying, oh, shame on you, shame, shame, shame. And there's a difference between that and saying, hey, let's work together on this, and let's try to see what we can come up with to figure out how to help each other. And that's what the scripture talks about. We're supposed to carry one another's burdens, and this way we fulfill the law of Christ, it says in Galatians. And so we carry one another's burdens, we support each other, and we try to build each other up. We don't try to tear each other down. And the difference between constructive judgment and destructive judgment is one tears down, the other seeks to build up. God bless.